Carriage, David took the last train home after a late shift. The subway car was nearly empty. Just an old man in the corner and a woman sitting with her head down. The fluorescent lights flickered as the train rumbled through the tunnel. At the next station, the doors slid open but no one entered. David glanced outside. The platform was empty. Yet as the doors began to close, a shadow moved at the edge of his vision. The train continued, but something felt wrong. The air grew heavy, and a strange pressure built in his ears. He looked up and saw the woman across from him, slowly lifting her head. Her face was blurred, as if smeared like an out-of-focus photograph. Then suddenly her mouth twisted into an unnatural grin. David turned to the old man for help, but the seat was empty. The train jolted, and when he looked back, the woman was now sitting right beside him. A whisper crawled into his ear. "You're not supposed to be here." The train screeched to a halt. The lights went out. When they flickered back on, David was gone. The last carriage was empty again. The train continued into the dark tunnel, waiting for the next passenger who stayed on too long. Whispers between stations. Karen boarded the midnight train, exhausted after work. The other passengers sat quietly, lost in their own worlds. The rhythmic clatter of the tracks lulled her into a half-sleep. Then she heard it, a whisper, soft, indistinct words curling through the air. She looked around. No one reacted. The man across from her scrolled through his phone. The elderly woman by the door dozed off. Another whisper, closer this time. Karen turned her head and saw a reflection in the dark train window. Her own face, but the lips were moving. Even though she wasn't speaking, the reflection smiled. "Next stop," it whispered. The train slowed, but when Karen looked outside, there was no station, only a black void stretching endlessly. The doors slid open. A rush of cold air swept through the train. The reflection's smile widened. "You should get off now." Karen's body stiffened. The whisper was inside her head, crawling through her thoughts. Her reflection extended a hand, beckoning. The train jolted and the lights flickered. The next moment, Karen was gone. The passengers never noticed. The train continued on, and in the dark window, Karen's reflection still sat there, watching, waiting for someone else to listen. The passenger who never left Mark always took the late train home. It was a quiet, uneventful ride, the kind where people kept to themselves, lost in their thoughts or phones. The city passed by in a blur of dim streetlights and empty platforms. That night, as he stepped into the last carriage, he immediately noticed the old man sitting near the back. His suit was old-fashioned, neatly pressed, but his skin was too pale, almost grayish. He stared straight ahead, unmoving, unblinking. Mark sat a few rows away and scrolled through his phone, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up his spine. The train rattled through the tunnels, stopping at nearly empty stations. Each time the doors slid open, a few passengers got on or off, but the old man never moved. At one stop, Mark glanced up again. Something wasn't right. The windows reflected the dimly lit carriage, the flickering overhead lights, the few tired passengers. But there was something missing. The old man had no reflection. A cold weight settled in Mark's chest. He turned his head slightly to look directly at the man. The seat was empty. His breath hitched. He was sure the man had been sitting there just moments ago. His pulse pounded in his ears as he scanned the carriage. Had the man gotten off without him noticing? The train jolted as it entered another tunnel. The lights flickered. When they stabilized, Mark's blood turned to ice. The old man was now sitting beside him. His head turned slowly, too slowly, until their eyes met. His mouth opened, but no words came out, only a cold breath that sent shivers down Mark's spine. The air around them grew heavy, suffocating. Mark tried to move, but his body felt frozen. The train lights flickered again. This time when they came back on, everything was dark outside the windows. No tunnels, no stations, just an endless void. The old man leaned closer. "You stayed too long," he whispered. Then the train lurched violently. The world spun. The last thing Mark saw was the old man's hollow, endless eyes. When the train arrived at its final stop, Mark was gone. His phone lay abandoned on the seat, screen cracked, still buzzing with missed calls. And in the windows